Welcome to the amazing world of Blender. I've prepared this free course for you to learn everything from scratch using the latest version of Blender. We will start with getting familiar with Blender interface, then move on to the professional 3D modeling. After that, we will dive into the shading and materials, followed by camera animation, compositing, and finally rendering. All explained in the simplest way possible. I've designed this course so beginners can step into the world of 3D art and showcase their creativity. If you like to see this channel improve every day and bring you even more useful and exciting tutorial, I'd be thrilled if you like, subscribe, and share your thought with me. Your feedback helps me continue this journey even stronger. So let's start this learning adventure together. My name is Murtaza Brahimi and I'm going to be your coach throughout this tutorial. Hello dear friends and welcome to this beginner course. In this course we are going to use Blender 4.3. When you first open up Blender, you will see this nice splash screen with the name of the version of Blender. So for diving into that, we can just click out of the box or you can click on General. Once you click there, you will be guided into the viewport. So this screen is almost 95% of our process will be inside this. If we hover mouse here, you will see current editor type for this area is 3D viewport. And then we have here a lot of other things which I'm going to cover each of these later in this lecture. So in viewport, you can hold down middle mouse to navigate, to rotate around your scene, or you can hold down Control and middle mouse to zoom in or out. You can hold down Shift and middle mouse to make a pan. Yeah, this is the basic of just rotating around it. And then top here we have other things like modeling in case if you want to dive into the modeling. So we can just jump from the layout. Currently we are in layout, and then we can go to modeling tip to start modeling things. Later I will cover each of these and talk about each of these parts deeply. And then we have here sculpting, which we can sculpt things. And then we have the UV editing, which is important things, especially when we want to discuss about the texturing. So we will work with this part, UV editing. Then we have texture painting, which is which these brushes is added in the version 4.3, which is a lot helpful. So we want to discover later. And then we have the shading, very important for adding materials, create realistic textures. We have the animation. In case if we want to animate things, we can jump directly into the animation. Of course we can create our own workspace, but this is already made, so this workspace is created for just clicking and start animating things. Then we have the render setting and then compositing at the last. Of course we have geometry and scripting, which we don't want to touch these two, and the sculpting as well. So let's go to the layout again. In the layout we can adjust each of these by clicking on this area on the icon, which stays in this case highlighted with the blue color. We can change each of these into something else. For example, say we want to change it to shader editor, and boom, we instead of a viewport, 3D viewport, now we have converted to a shader editor. In the top right corner we have these circular things, which allows us to jump from solid to wireframe or to render preview. If you hold a second on these, it will say that you're in the material preview, or this one is render mode. For example, in the property tab, we can click on the render properties and we can choose cycle as a render. A lot of other details underneath the just a render properties, and then we have output and other stuffs that we see here. For example, we have the modifiers, which is a lot helpful. We can just take help of these and create really awesome things. We will talk about these later. Instead of clicking here, we can press Z to have access to that. Using hotkeys always faster. Then top here we have the outliner. You can change the outliner to something else, as I said. You can adjust the size of each of these editor type. For example, by hovering the mouse on this boundary and just move it to the left and right, or to top and bottom. Or you can join an area by right clicking and then join up or join down. For example, join up will maximize this editor type and will remove the outliner that we had. But in case if you want to add the outliner again, you just need to hover your mouse at the corners where you see the plus, and then just drag it down or to the right. That's depend on in which direction you want to add the new editor type. Then click here and choose the outliner. Let's go to the viewport shading. I like to use flat, but let's demonstrate these. You can choose different presets, or we can go to matcap and choose each of these. But I like to go to the flat, and here we have the wires, which actually the wires, if we go here and turn on the wires on the viewport, so this is the viewport overlays, we can turn the on and off. So all these setting is underneath the viewport overlays. We can, for example, turn off the axis or turn it on, and then we have the floor, this grid, and then text info. If I just turn it off, you will see there is no longer text information. Statistics, which allows you to see how many polygon, vertex, edge, or face you have in your scene. So let's turn it off. And then we have annotation, because we don't have any annotation from here, so we don't see those. But as soon as I add some annotation, now we can turn those off or on. So let's delete it. And then extra things, we have the face orientation. Later in the modeling process we will need it. And then we have the origins. If I just turn it off, you will no longer see its origin. So let's just move it up to see. Now the origin is important. Later I will talk about that. And then if you have multiple objects, you can turn the origin for all of those. For example, now you can see the light's origin and the camera origin, where there is place. If you turn it off, you will just disable it. So that's the very basic. And then we have viewport gizmo, in case if you want to disable things from here, you can do it. And then we have the visibility and selectability. If I disable the meshes, you can see that all the mesh, or every mesh that we will add in the 3D viewport, will be hidden. Or you can select this one to make it lock, so that we can't select it anymore. You will see that if I just select it, we can actually. So let's turn it on again. And then right here we have these kind of toggle X-ray mode, which allows you to see even inside the objects. So let's turn it off. You can open up viewport shading and change the viewport, the background, to something else. In the left side we have these gizmo, which allows us from the top, allows us to select. If you hold a second on it, we will see a list of the selection tools like tweak or select box, circle, and lasso. Once we choose this select, we can directly drag the object and around the scene. It can be a light, it can be anything inside our viewport. then we hold a second again, and then we can change it to something else. The easiest way to select each of these, we can press W on keyboard to change it to anything that you prefer. And then here we have the 3D cursor, which I'm going to talk about that later, but let's talk about these: location, rotation, and scale. As soon as I select these, the move, we will see those handles or the axis appear on the screen. We can drag those to move in each direction. Let's click on these object properties data to see the transform information. So we can actually access the movement from the location in each direction of X, Y, or Z, or we can just click here and drag those. We still can do the same thing for all of those. We have the gizmo to move those, and then we have the same thing for the scale. The hotkey for using these, if you just hold a second, you will see G for the grab, and R for rotation, and S for scale. So it is a lot faster to use just hotkey. For example, I press G first, select the cube in this case, and then we press G to grab it, and then just name the axis you want to move it in along that, X, Y, or Z. The same thing is R for rotation. R, then name the axis that you want move, and you will see that it actually start moving the axis. And then S for scale, and then just type the axis after you press S, and then just type X or Y or Z in this case. This flat icon, with the help of that, you can block out the axis that you are currently on, and it allows you to scale in those two other axes. For example, drag it, and you will see on the 3D viewport, you will see just X and Z axis. So you can now just scale along Z and X axis, and you will see this clearly here. X and Z axis just move, and the Y is still on there. The hotkey for that is press S and hold down Shift and Z, or Shift and X, Shift and Y. This allows you to actually scale things except the name of the axis that you enter. The same thing, R and Shift Z. In this case, I block out the Z axis by pressing Shift or Shift X, and then G and Shift Z. Now I can, for example, move it along those two axes except the Z axis. So this is really handy and helpful during the modeling process. So let's set it to the box selection, and then by clicking here we will see all the transform. For the rotation, we can press RR 2 times, and then we will freely rotate our object. And then here we have the annotation. You can hold a second. We have other type of annotate in line, polygon, or then we can erase those. For example, annotate. And then we can choose another thing, for example, like so. Then we can change the color to something else, and you can change it to any color you want. Then if you want to erase it, you can erase it this way, or just select the annotate and open it up, and just delete those, or just click here to delete everything. And then we have the measure. You can measure things by holding down Control, and then it say that this is 2 meters. And the measurement for this is, we can go to this icon, which is scene, and then we can open up units, and you will see that unit system is based on metric. This object right here, we can assign any primitive that we like very fastly. So hold a second, and you have cube, cone, cylinder, and those other primitives. We can assign a cylinder, hold down shift, and boom. So we added these primitives with just if you click. Let's clear whatever we have in the scene by pressing A and then X and delete those. Let's press Ctrl Z. With the help of Ctrl Z, you can undo, and then Shift Ctrl Z, you can redo. And then on the story, we have full control over these. You can hold on Shift to select multiple objects to delete those by pressing X. And then, for example, say that you selected all of these three and you want to deselect these. So how you can do that? Well, you need to hold on Control and just deselect these, and then remove these. But let's remove these as well. And then we have nothing in the outliner. So let's click on the Add menu, and then we go to the Mesh, and then we add any object. This can be a cube. And you can see that on the underneath the Add menu, we have other things like curve and then text, all of these, such as lights. Okay, so let's add a cube. And now we want to start manipulating that. So you can press numpad on your keyboard, this dot, to zoom on this object that you want. For example, now you can just focus on it, rotate it around it. Okay, let's press Shifty to duplicate it, and now we have a duplication of these by pressing Shifty, and you can see that we have cube 001. Now let's select both of these and press Shift and D, and then press or type Y to move it in Y axis. Now we have 4 cube. So, but I want to only focus on one of these. So you can press numpad on your keyboard to just focus on it, or you can focus on these two. Then you can press numpad, and it just looking through here, which is the center point. If you want to solve things, you can press Shift and H to hide everything except this one that you want to work on it. If you want to bring back those, you can press Alt and H. Now you will see those is back. And then if you want to hide something, you just need to select it and press H, and it will hide it. Then Alt H will bring back all the hided parts. Let's select these and delete them. Now let's actually edit a few of these primitives. For editing, we are in the layout, even we don't need to go to the modeling tab. Yeah, so we simply here, we just need to go here and click on edit, or let's go to object mode. We're in object mode now. You just need to select the cube or the mesh, and then hit tab button on your keyboard, and now it allows you to switch to the edit mode. As soon as you switch to edit mode, we see the vertices because we are in the vertex mode. Then we have the edge mode for just grabbing the edges, and then we have the face mode to just grab the faces. So these 3 is important. So we can have access to those by pressing 1, 2, 3. 1 for vertex, 2 edge, and 3 for face, which is a lot faster using these. So let's enter tab again, and now I like to talk about 3D cursor. So about 3D cursor, we can select it, and then everywhere that I click, you will see that the 3D cursor will follow my cursor. So you can just set it to the, and it's important actually. For example, now if I go to the add menu, or instead of going to add menu, we can press Shift A to bring or to have access to this menu. Then we can add, for example, let's say a Suzanne head. Click on the viewport shading and disable wireframes. And you will see that its origin point will be placed exactly at the position of the 3D cursor. Now if I just hold down Shift and right click, you will see that the 3D cursor will move according these hotkey. So Shift and right click, it is much easier to just selecting it from here. Shift and right click. And now if I just press Shift A and add a new, for example, Taurus, it will be placed at this part. Now let's delete these two, and I like to select it and enter tab. Now we have these vertex. If I just move my 3D cursor here, we can actually assign a new object to that part. So let's talk about this 3D cursor a little bit more. So we can hold on Shift and right click to move the 3D cursor, and we have another very interesting thing, which is Shift and S. Once we press Shift and S, we will see this pie menu which will pop up, and then we have selection to cursor, which if we select this cube, by selecting this option we can move our cube to the position of 3D cursor. Boom. And now let's hold on Shift and right click to move the 3D cursor somewhere here, and then we press Shift and S again, and in this case cursor to selected. So we already selected the cube, and then if I just choose the cursor to select it, the 3D cursor, wherever it is, it will move or jump to the position of the selected object. Shift S again, and then we have other axis, selection to active, in case if we have, for example, multiple of these objects, one of these is active, and the active is the object that is highlighted with a yellow color, not orange. You see these two is orange and this one is highlighted with a yellow. So if we press Shift S, so Shift S and selection to active, and now both of those will be fly exactly at the center of the cube, because the cube was active object. And of course we have other things like selection to grid, and then cursor to active, or if I just press Ctrl Z, now you can see, for example, let's hold down Shift and choose this one as a selected object. If I press Shift S, 3D cursor will move exactly at the center of the active object, which is a sphere in this case. And then we explain this one. In case if you want to reset your the position of your 3D cursor to the world origin, you can choose this one. And now we have it on the 3D cursor. Let's press numpad on this object. Oh, I forget to say something. If we, for example, have multiple objects, we can just, instead of just pressing Shift H, we can just press numpad slash. In this case, it doesn't hide things, but it will focus, but we don't see anything except the selected object. So we can press numpad slash again to bring everything in. So let's delete it. In this video, I'd like to talk about the snap mode. I've added this sphere and I press Shift A to bring a new cone. We enter tab and I scale it down to make it just a bit smaller. Then we grab everything, G and 1 and Z to move it up, and you will see that its origin point will be placed underneath, which is fine. Now let's move it by grabbing it outside of the sphere. Now let's enter on this snap, or you can press Shift Tab actually to turn it on and off. So let's set it to first play around with the increment. We can go and play around with the scale of our world to change the increments. Or let's leave it to 1. As you can see, if I just move it in, for example, X and Y axis, it will snap to each of these increments. Let's look at from top. Each of these square shape is an increment. Now it will snap to each of these small faces. And then grid is actually, this is the grid, and it will snap. And if I just look at from here, you will see clearly that it is snap on each of these grid. So by default, it is set, and the effect is set to move. We can do the same thing with rotation by pressing R. You turn everything off except the rotation, and now we can see that each time I try to rotate it, it will snap. And let's try the scale. By pressing S, it will snap to each of these increments. And now let's go with the vertex. Set it to vertex. Now this has vertex edge and faces. So when we set it to a vertex, it actually will be placed based on its origin point on this sphere. So let's just grab it and nothing will happen first. So let's make sure to fix a few things first. Let's move it to set the effect to move, and then yeah, everything is okay, and turn on align rotation to target. As soon as I do, you will see that this kind of thing will happen. It will snap on each vertex. So on these places is the vertices. So as soon as I move it, it will snap on each of these vertex. Okay, so that's about it. And then we have the same thing. So let's set it to center, and you can see that it actually snap based on the center. The origin point of this is exactly at the center. So this is the closest part, and this is the center, and it will work in the same way with all other direction. Let's go with the face and set the face project, and you can see that it is snap on each of these faces. So that's good because we can just press Shift D, duplicate, and assign if you have these in different places. So it's very helpful in editing. Let's press and go to view and turn off these annotation. So that's about the snap mode, how it will work. You can use it when it's turned off. You can just select it and Shift D, and you hold on Control to, in this case, the snap will work. The next thing is the transform pivot point. For example, if I just select these three objects, or let's say if you have these objects, and I try to scale, this will be scaled based on the transform pivot point individual origins. Now you can see each of these objects has their own origin point, and it is placed on the underneath it, on the very bottom of the object. And if I just change the transform pivot point to bounding box, now they no longer will be scaled individually, but it actually like a box will be scaled like a box. If you set the transform pivot point to 3D cursor, now the 3D cursor is exactly at the center of this sphere. Now just take a look what will happen. It will be scaled based on the 3D cursor that we have. Let's go to the transform orientation. This is important as well. The difference between global and local. So the local is actually when you want to transform an object relative to the world's default coordinate system. For example, moving an object along the global x-axis means it moves parallel to the world's x-axis regardless of the object's rotation. And the local orientation useful for transformations relative to an object's current orientation. For example, moving an object along local x-axis means the object moves in the direction its x-axis is pointing, even if it has been rotated. For example, if I go to Option and turn on the location and the orientation and we scale it, you will see that the object, which is the sphere in this case, its location is correct with the world. So if I just turn the axis of the world, you see that z-axis, y-axis, and x-axis, this will follow all of the world axis, the sphere. But if I just select each of these cones, they have been converted to local axis. So they no longer follow the global, but these are in the local axis. That means that because we rotated each of these, if I just press N, we go to item, you will see that it has got some rotation. Their axis or direction has been changed, and now they are following their local axis. It's not match the global or the world, in this case, axis. You can see each of these is different. But the sphere, because we didn't rotate it, it is still follow the global. Let's turn this off. And now you can see that if I just press R 2 times, just see a text right here. R and then Z, it's a along global Z-axis. If I just press Z again, it's a along local X. So both Z for the local and global of this sphere is the same. But for this one, for example, if I just move it, let's grab this sphere and move it to the Z-axis. So we grab it by G, and then Z once is a global along a global Z-axis. If I just press Z again, it's a along local. Still the local and global Z-axis for this object is the same. But now, if I just grab, for example, this one, I press G and then Z, it say that it's global is not matching. But if I just press Z again, say that it's local Z-axis to work in this direction. So it's actually useful. It's good to understand. So G, Z, Z. So you have to press 2 times until you get in a right way. G, X, X. Now it's time to dive into another very interesting topic, which is the modifier. To enable modifier, we can go and add a cube. If we go to these modifier properties, for example, we can adjust this shape a lot better and faster. We can model this shape to any things that we like by combining a combination of editing and modifiers. For example, we open up here and you see we have a search bar and then these categories, which is organized really good. We have the edit, play around with the vertex weight and data transfer. Then we have the generate, which we will use a lot. Then we have the deforms, which as it sounds, it will deform objects. Then normals and physics. So let's go to generate and play around with a few of these, such as array, the first one. As soon as I add array, you will see the count. As many count I add, it will duplicate the first object. If I just enter tab and scale it down, you will see. So this array modifier, what it does is that it copy the same object multiple times. Now we can go to the roll weight offset. We can play around with the X, Y, and Z factor. As you can see, in the factor X, we see number 1. We can type 1 in the y-axis, and now you will see it will move it according the y-axis as well. We can do a lot with the modifiers. For example, we can stack modifiers. Here we have the real time, which we can hide it, and this will be hide in just viewport, and this one will be hide the modifier in render mode later when we take render animation or image. So let's click here and we can add another modifier on top of this. So let's demonstrate it first and then we will combine those. Now we have the bevel. As it sounds, we have the amount of the bevel. Since we have a very clean faces and edges without any issues, so we can bevel, play around with the amount a lot, but sometimes we can play around with the amount just a little bit. And then we have the segments, how smooth you want to create your object. So we can combine modifiers together. For example, let's turn on real time, and now you can combine it and just play around with it. You can copy modifiers, duplicate it, and just continue whatever you have and create multiple copies of that. You can go and play around with these factors that you have got it here. So let's reset that factor and just play around with the Z, for example, or you can play around with the Y. Let's type Y and then make this one 0, and now we have everything in Y axis. So let's demonstrate some other. We have the boolean, which will cut things. For example, if I just grab and add something, a new, for example, a sphere, and we can scale it down, move it in Y axis, and let's move it from top part so that you can see clearly. And then we select this main object. We're going to add the boolean modifier to that. Select with this eyedropper the sphere, and boom, you have got this thing. So let's select it once again, and we go and play around with these things. If we switch to wireframe mode, we will see that it cut it, but because this is in solid mode, we can't see it. We can fix this issue by going to the object properties data, turn this one up, the viewport display, and then display as, because we selected this object, now we can set display object as wires, and you will see that this is cut. But why this isn't applied to other things? That's because the boolean modifier is the last object or the modifier that we added. We can move it up, and now you will see it will work on every of these things. So you can stack and play around with the modifier. Now you can see that I just moved the bevel first, and the bevel, all the objects is beveled, and as well we have the boolean, and as well we have the array modifier applied to each of these. So the order is very important in using booleans. Now if I just enter tab and let's press Shift A, and we add a new object, it can be a cylinder. We can scale that cylinder down, and then we can move it in Y axis. Let's rotate it 90 degrees in X axis, and then we can move it back inside this part, and you'll see a very interesting thing. So let's press Shift D and rotate it 90 degrees in this angle. So let's move it this way, and 90 degrees in z-axis. Let's look at from front orthographic by Control 1. Yeah, that's about it. And then you can, for example, select these edge and just play around with these things. Okay, so that's a very basic understanding of the modifiers. For editing, we can use a cylinder, and we want to set it to 12 vertices, which is fine. And then we can select this face, then enter tab, and we will be guided into the editing page or edit mode. Top here we have vertex, edge, and faces. You can have access to those by pressing 1, 2, 3 on your keyboard. So for example, let's select these face, and we can hold on Ctrl and plus to select the multiple or further faces. You can press Ctrl and negative or the minus to select less faces. Okay, so this is very handy and very useful. And then we can press X to delete some faces, or if we have a vertex, we can delete those. Then we can dissolve even. So let's delete these faces. And then now we have just this single face. All the editing tools is right here. And the first one is the extrude options. Once you see this triangle, a small triangle underneath any icon, that's mean that there is more option that is hidden or included in this group. So you can hold a second on it with a left mouse button, and then these will be pop up. And this is the same thing. You will see other extrude tools that we have got it here. So the first one is extrude. You can have access to this list by pressing Alt E, or if you want just extrude it, you can press E to extrude that. So now we like to extrude it, and then we want to extrude it once again and once again. So 3 times we extrude that. And now let's use some other option by pressing Alt E. Of course, anytime that you extrude, you will see this option. If you want, then we can play around with some of the setting, but let's escape it for now. And now if I just press Alt E by selecting a face, we will see some other extrude options like along normals, individual faces, and manifold. So let's talk about along normals. Along normals, if I just go here and turn on these normals, the faces, you will see that on each face we will see these lines. This is the normals. Currently we have selected the normals for the faces. We can turn it off and turn on the normal for the edge and for the vertex. But this means that if I choose, for example, this guy, let's select 3 faces by holding a shift, and then Alt E, we can choose face along normal, and look what will happen. It just extrude those based on the normals, right? But Alt E individual origin is just a bit different. So later you will understand more about that when we will work with a few of these settings. So let's press 1 to look at from orthographic mode, and we want to select a couple of faces. So let's select the box selection and hold on shift and select these faces. And that's fine. So let's use the inset face by pressing I. So the hotkey for that is I, and then we can press Alt E and choose extrude face along normals. Just a little bit first, because we want to create a line. Later we want to use a few modifiers. That's great. And then now press I to insert the face again. And then I once again to create this insert face. And then you can scale it. And the scale will be working based on the transform pivot point. In this case, we can set it to bounding box, and you will see what is happening if I just switch to solid to wireframe mode. Because we choose bounding box, it will work like so. Ctrl Z, let's set it to individual origin. Individual origin will be scale each one on its place. So let's set it to at least bounding box or 3D cursor, because 3D cursor is at the center. But let's go to with a bounding box. Now we created this nice shape. Let's continue. Let's select this face, and then we want to, or let's select this face first, and then we have the other option, which is bevel with a Ctrl B. We can press Ctrl and B to bevel this part very easily. And then select this part and press I to insert the face and just move it down a little bit. That's great. Now let's select the top face, and we want to press I to insert the face again. Just a little bit, not too much. And then E for extrude. And then I for insert the face. And E to extrude. And you can press E to extrude once again. And at this time, I hold down Alt to select a loop face. Then we can press Alt E and choose extrude face along normals. You will see this, how this will work. This is because we choose each of these faces will be extruded individually, so we will get this kind of result. So let's press Ctrl Z, and in this case we choose face along normals. Okay, that's right, that's fine. Then let's select this face, make it smaller, and then press E for extrude. And I like to select this face, and I like to press Shift and D to duplicate that mesh or that face. And now let's scale it by pressing S in X axis, or sorry, in the Y axis. Okay, now we can select this face again and extrude that downward. Let's select it back and move it up. And now I like to select this face and this face. We can right click and choose bridge faces, and it will bridge it very nicely. And then let's press I for insert the face and just move it up and slightly scale it down. So now the next thing is this loop cut. We can assign loop cut by pressing Ctrl R. So we can assign loop cut, and then we can scale it to make this part just a bit smoother. And then we can add another loop cut, select here, and create and scale it just a bit inside. Hold down Alt and select this part, scale it in X axis. And boom, we have got this nice object. So let's combine these with the modifiers. Let's go and assign a subdivision modifier. And we will get this nice shape, so I can make it more round. Let's play around with a few things here. Smoother, scale it in this way. You can turn off or on while you're editing. For example, here we need to press Ctrl R to add another loop cut, and Ctrl R here to add another loop cut. We want to make these edges just a bit sharper, and Ctrl R. Now we can use bevel again. So select this edge by holding down Alt and left click to select it. Then we can press Ctrl and B. Now we can bevel the edge instead of facing. So let's select it and Ctrl B once again. And this way we will add edge for this subdivision modifier to work. Because subdivision modifier, if there is no other edge, will make this part very, very smooth. It will almost make it like so. So in some case we need that sharpness. And now let's turn it off again, turn it on again, and we will see this nice shape. So we even can, for example, select these parts, and we press Ctrl and B to add a bevel to that. With just adding that edge, we have created these nice shapes. You can press Ctrl Z to leave it as it is. So this is how we use a couple of these tools that is right here. Let's press H to hide it. Now we go and add a new object. This can be a plane, for example. Let's enter tab. And for this plane, we want to create another type of object. So let's extrude these. Now we have the edges which we can extrude it, and we can press Ctrl and R to assign a loop cut, right? And then we can press Ctrl R here as well to assign another loop cut. Now we can select these edges, press E and choose, and then just release your mouse by right clicking. Now you can scale those in Y axis. That's perfect. Now let's select all these edges by holding down Alt. You can select multiple edges, then move those in X axis a little bit. Let's select these two. I believe we can scale them just a bit more, and then we can play around with the vertices. We can, for example, slide. This is the slide edge or vertex. We can select each of these edges and slide those by pressing GG 2 times. Let's just select this one and this one, press GG 2 times, and we can slide those. Then select it and just move it in this direction. And now let's select these two and move them up just a little bit. So now let's select these two and extrude them in X-axis once again and scale it down. Move it back a little bit, move these two as well back, and then you can scale these two inside and move them up. So we've created this very nice shape. Let's select this edge by holding down Alt and Ctrl B to bevel it. That's enough, I believe. Then we can select the one to select these vertices and move those up slightly. And another loop cut, and that's about it. Press 3 to face. Now we want to extrude it, right? So we can press E to extrude it, or instead we can press Ctrl Z. We go to modifiers and we go to the generate, and we want to assign this solidify modifier. What its job is that it will add thickness to any surface. Now we can go to the generate again and add the subdivision modifier. We can set the level to 2 and then enter tab, or let's assign another modifier, which is the generate. We can assign this bevel modifier, move it up, I believe, after the solidify modifier, and boom, we have got this nice shape. Or you can hide everyone. Instead, we can select these faces. Let's turn all of those off, and we press E for extrude and R, Control R to assign a loop cut, Control B, and then yeah. Now let's turn them on again, except the bevel, and then let's set it to 2. Right click, shade auto smooth. If you want to make the edges just a bit sharper, well, we can just slide these in this direction and then move them in x-axis to make those just a bit sharper. So that's how you can combine editing with the modifiers. Let's hide it, and we want to add another thing, which can be cylinder, for example. Let's scale it, select everything and scale it down in this way. And then let's look at from top, and we want to press 3, select these 2 faces, and press E, and let's select those now, scale those in Z-axis. So we pressed E, and then we release the mouse by right clicking, and then we scale those extruded faces. Let's extrude it once again. And now let's look at from one of the angles and just select each of these faces. Now we can press and extrude those. So we can press I for inside the face first, and then Alt E and choose face along normals. So let's extrude it first just a little bit and just a bit more. And then we can add another loop cut here, another loop cut here. Select both of these faces, I for inside the face. If we add the subdivision modifier, we will get these. And then we can select these 2 faces, right click and bridge the faces. So let's assign a new loop cut here and Control B to bevel that. And boom, we have created this very nice shape. So that's how we can combine things together. Let's press IH to hide it. Now let's create another object. First, I like to assign a cube. Enter tab, select the top face and move it down. You can hold down Alt and hold down Control and set this one to increment. And now if I hold down Control, you will see that it will move in each increment. You can hold down Control and Shift to move it smoothly. Then I like to select these edges by pressing 2, and we can actually first let's assign a subdivision, And then we can press N to open up the items. And I like to assign a bevel, or let's, instead of these, let's choose a bevel modifier. And now I can assign mean bevel weight. And set the limit method to weight. As soon as I do it, you will see that this bevel will work just on the edges. So now we can play around with it and assign more segments. Let's select these and shift it to duplicate it, because we didn't use duplication for this purpose too much. Now let's select the top face and move it down by G and Z. Somewhere around it should be here. Now we have different bevels. So we have the bevel for this back one and for the foreground. Now we can play around with the amount just a little bit more. And the origin point is floating on the air. You can right click and set origin to geometry. Now it's from the center. So it's very important. I like to assign some, make it like a notepad. So how we can make those like wires around it. That's pretty simple. Let's move the 3D cursor here, Shift A, and we add this circle. Let's set it to something around 24 and make it smaller. Let's move from top and move it just a bit in x-axis, and then we can select it, move it up, and we press F to fill that area, right? So we look at from one of the angles, and in this time we want to use the spin. We set it to x-axis, and a spin will be work according the 3D cursor. So let's look at from one of these angles and select both of these objects. And I believe let's select these two, and yeah, we move 3D cursor somewhere around here. But it won't work until we move, for example, 3D cursor somewhere around here. Let's try. Now select it. You will see how it will work, right? But we need more geometry. Let's scale it down a little bit, and then let's set the steps to higher, like 634, and then let's play around with it. And now we have got a very better shape. Since this circle is very big, so we can now again play around with the 3D cursor. So let's move a copy of these to tell the 3D cursor that, hey man, you have to be here, for example, in order to this work properly. Let's move it somewhere here and Shift S and cursor to selected area. Now select this face. Shift S and cursor to selected. Now let's try. And now it will work better, a lot better. And let's complete it. Why? You can just type negative, for example, 360. And then you can just make it smaller if you want. But this is how it will work. Then you can combine it with a modifier, for example, array, and set it to 3 and play around with this. Let's add the bevel again to make these edges smoother. Assign a couple of segments. Do the same thing here. So the first one will just affect these mean bevel weights, and then the second one will be adjust the edges entirely. That's about it. Let's select these and press M. We can create collection and note book, for example, and we can turn these off. Let's turn the other props on, scale it down a little bit, and move them here and there, and we can select those and name it to props, and we can turn this one off as well. Let's work with some other options that we didn't work until now by creating a very nice key. So let's assign a cube first, enter tab, and let's select the select box and scale it just a little bit down. And then I like to select this face and extrude it just a bit towards this way, and extrude it once again. First hold down Alt and select this loop edge, Alt E, and face along normals. You can press S. S means that offset even. Sometimes the shape of the object will not work properly, so you have to enter S. Then let's assign another loop cut by Ctrl R, bevel that loop cut, and I would like to select this face and extrude it out. And then I like to extrude it, scale it in this way. So let's press Ctrl and R again, Ctrl B. So let's select everything and push them back. And then select these two faces and push them or extrude them this way. Now, a lot better. Of course, we can look at from top angle, select these edges and scale them in the z-axis to make it a bit better. So let's continue modeling this. Now I like to make this part just a bit round. How we can make it? Well, we can go to shear, and then instead of shear we can use to sphere. And once it's selected, you can just move your mouse to make it like a sphere. But this one won't work exactly as we want. So let's select the select box. Instead, I have a very cool add-on. It names Loop Tool. We can use it to make these circle. You can enable these add-on by going to Edit Preferences in Add-on menu. If you type Loop Tools, of course you haven't here until you go to the Get Extension and install all your extension. Make sure to connect it to the internet, because first time it will install all these extensions from, it will download those from blender.org, and then you can now search any tools like Loop Tools. And yeah, so I published the tutorial on my YouTube channel. You can watch it, and I will put the link in the description as well. So add on and Loop Tool, enable it. Once it enable, let's select these faces, right click, and we go to circle, and it will create this nice circle. You can rotate it if you want, or scale it just a bit down. Then we can press E to extrude, and then E once again, just a little bit. And then let's select this part and face along normals. That's very good. So let's assign the rest of the shapes just a bit different. Let's, for example, select these and make it just a bit crooked style. That's thing that I love it a lot. So that's about it. And then let's select these and Shift S cursor to select it. Now I like to, for example, select one of the edges, or we can assign a new plane, move it towards this way, and at this time I like to use another tool which called knife tool. So we have the bisect and knife tool. Let's rotate it. You can press you can press 4 and 6 to rotate each 90 degrees, which is very interesting and useful. And then 8 and 2 to rotate in y-axis each 15 degrees. So let's shape these. For example, we can draw a shape around this object. Let's first scale it in y-axis as well a little bit. And let's press Ctrl R first to select a face, a part of it, and we want to delete the rest. Now let's press K to activate the knife tool. Right. Now I like to, for example, start from here and just draw my shape how I like. And then press enter. Once you press enter, it will be assigned. Now let's press K again, and we will continue adding that once again. Now let's press 3, select these two faces and delete them. We have got just this shape. Now we can extrude it. Select this bottom face and we can scale it down and just move it like so. Now what about the half of these? Let's select these two and delete those faces. We can use a modifier called mirror modifier, and we have these axes. Let's set it to y-axis instead. And now we've got this very nice edge. Let's reset this edge in y-axis by pressing 0. Yeah, that's about it. And then we can play around with the faces. For example, this face, we can drag it down. This edge, let's move it towards this way and look at from top. Let's, for example, select or add another edge, move those in x-axis, and that's perfect. Let's move it now and connect it to this object. Of course, we can select it and scale it. And let's look at from here. Let's select these parts. And move them back. We can come across here, select these two vertices and press J to join them together, and do the same thing here, J to join them together. And now we can press 3, select the loop edge, Alt E, extrude face along normals. Now we created this very nice shape. Let's move 3D cursor somewhere around here. Cursor to select it, and then right click and set origin to 3D cursor. Now we can scale it towards this way, and it will be scaled based on the origin because we moved the origin to 3D cursor. So let's grab it
and scale it in y-axis to make it flatten. Now let's assign these object by Control A, and then we can select these two and merge those by Control J. Now this is one object. You can anytime select the entire object and press M and choose by distance. It will remove some vertices, which is unnecessary vertices, and will make some issue, but here we have a clean geometry which is perfect. So that's how you can create this shape. You can press F2 and name it to key. Now that you already know about how to use editing tools in Blender, let's do a couple of assignments. Let's create a very nice low poly house with some trees to reuse whatever we have learned so far. We can combine modeling or editing and the modifiers and whatever else we have learned. So I like to start with a very basic simple shape or primitive, and this is the cube. We can select the first face and then G grab it and move it in z-axis by 2 meters. Now the length or the height of this is about, so let's hold on Control, and you will see that it is 4 meters because it was 2 and we extrude that 2 meters further. Let's add another cube by pressing Shift A. We move it in Y axis. Let's grab it and press Y and hold Control to snap it, but it will snap based on the center, and that's because I set the snap base to active. So let's set it to closest, and now if I just grab it by G, Y and hold on Control, it will snap to the edges, which is nice. Let's draw some more shapes. Let's use this add cube. Hold on Control, and in this way we can draw shapes and then draw something like this and then release it. So let's add another one somewhere around here. Hold on Control and draw and extrude it. Later we can change it, but let's do it again. Hold on Control and hold on Control once again from here and extrude it out. Oh, that's perfect. So this was the very basic shapes. Let's add another one. What can we do? Or let's select this cube, press Ctrl R to assign a loop cut, and press 3. I like to extrude this one even further. Now let's work on this shape. We can select this part, if extrude, and then if extrude, hold on Ctrl to snap it in this vertex or the corner of this model. Ctrl R, assign another loop cut, press 3, select this face, if extrude again, and if extrude again once again. Oh, let's press Ctrl Z. We can move it to somewhere here. Hold on Ctrl to snap it to this corner. Now it's exactly at the height of this corner. Extrude it once again. And now let's grab it and extrude it to here. And I like to extrude it more. And now let's select it, hold on Control to snap it there. Oh, let's continue extruding more. these faces, and then E, hold on Control to snap it here. You can continue with this one. So now we created this very nice shape. For these two faces, let's continue even more to snap it here. Okay, so you can, so this is a building. You can design your building how you want, but this is mine. Let's work on these two to grab it and move it down a little bit. Now we have added some thickness. Oh, I forget to select this part, so let's select it from this angle. GZ. Now we have more thickness around it. So another thing is that we grab these cube that we already added, and I like to add some loop cuts and assign it or snap it to the edges of here. So Control R and hold on Control to snap it there. Control R for here and hold on Control to snap it. That's perfect. Now if we just take a look by enabling the wireframe, we can press Shift H and you will see we added these lines or the bevels around it. So instead of Shift H, you can press numpad slash to just focus on this object. You can solo it and then numpad slash again to active all the hidden objects. Now let's work more on this project. We can grab the top face, move it up, and then select this face and this face. We can press I. So let's select all these faces which you see and extrude it by 2 meter. Right? Select these faces now. Let's Control R to assign a new loop cut. Select these faces, right click and subdivide those. Now we have more windows, and then we can press I for inside the face. You already learned that. And now this is, if it's not individual, so make sure to set it to individual because we want to extrude the glasses individually. Alt E and face along normals. Of course, you can, for example, work more with these. We can extrude, let's select, for example, this area. Control B to bevel it. And now we have more glasses to work. Let's even select this part. And then if I just select entire faces, we can extrude those inside. And then let's press I for inside the face once again. Alt E, face along normals again. And now we created these, which we have more windows. Okay, that's about it. Then what can we do more with it? Let's select this face. I'd like to move it just a bit up. And let's move this one towards this way. We can even connect it to some parts. But let's leave some gap to see the dimension more 3-dimensional. So let's assign some other like glasses. Let's move this by GG 2 times, and now we can press Ctrl R to assign another loop cut. Assign another loop cut now. Let's select these windows, and let's assign another loop cut. Well, assign another one, like a border or so, and let's select each of these first. Let's work here, GG 2 times. GG 2 times and GG 2 times. Select all of these. Extrude inside first, and then I for inside the face, and E for extrude again. So we need more windows. Let's assign a few here. Control R to add loop cuts, and Control R, and the rest should be fine. So let's add another loop cut, Control R. So we need to assign more loop cuts. So let's bevel this loop cut to make more windows available. Now let's grab each of these. I think it's too much Alt in face along normals. So now we have got more windows. So here we have no window. Well, let's add one loop cut here and another loop cut here. And now let's Control R and Control R here as well. So let's now select each of these faces. We can add another loop cut. That's great. Border for here, so let's assign it once again. And Control B to bevel this part. And now let's select all these windows. And even we can select this part if we want. First we have to extrude those inside. Yeah, this is the missing part. Let's add another border. Extrude it in. And now Control I to insert the face. So this is our modern exterior that we created. Now it's time for adding some other things like trees, etc. Let's grab it, move it to house or exterior, we can name it. Look at from bottom and move it up. Control S to save it. I name it house, perhaps, and cursor to world origin. Let's assign a plane to see the ground. And I like to take a duplication of this house, and as soon as I take a duplication we will select the plane as well. So let's remove it and let's hide it for a second. Because we have no modifiers, so we can easily select each of these, Ctrl J to join them. Now this is only one single object. We can select everything by A, then press M and merge by distance. Merge by distance, yes, and you will see a few vertices will be removed. That's very good. You can apply it. Sometimes there is a few vertices which is collapse on each other, and it will remove those unnecessary. So now we can hide it, add some other stuff. For assigning a tree, we can use a vertex, and with the combination of modifiers we can create that nice tree. So let's add a plane. I select this vertex, Ctrl I to inverse the selection, X, and delete all the vertices. Now we have these vertex. So let's hold on Ctrl and right click to extrude it. So this is a way of extrusion, right? So let's create some branches, and let's select this one. And let's grab this, and you can rotate it every time to adjust it more. Oh, let's turn off these proportional editing for a second. Later we will talk about that as well. Now I like to select, for example, this branch and control to continue creating a very long branch. You can slide by pressing GG 2 times. Okay, this is finished. So we can grab it and move it up. So this is a very basic branch that we have created, or tree. And how we can give that some thickness? Well, we selected Go to Modifiers, and in Generate we have something called Skin Modifier. As soon as I add, you will see these very nice skin on top of that. So, and then we can assign a subdivision to make it smoother. This is not a good shape of a tree, so let's manipulate some setting. Let's switch to wireframe mode by pressing Shift Z. You can really fast switch between these. First of all, we need to make this one as a root, because now this is a root. So let's select this part and make a root. So let's now select the top part of the branches. We have 3 branches in this case. And then we want to use proportional editing. Proportional editing is very cool because based on the proportional size, you can adjust things. For example, let's assign a sphere, because I didn't talk about that. And I like to select a part of these, a vertex, and then this is the power of proportional editing. Okay, so you can choose different fall off. If it's a constant, so that's really handy. This is a random, and the size is actually very important. Let's choose a smooth, because we set the size to really large, so we will get this effect. Another thing is connected only. Connected only won't work in this case, but we can assign another shape, like another sphere, and you will see that there is 2 spheres collapse on each other. And when this one is turned on, look what will happen. It actually just affects one of the spheres and not the rest. Let's set it to 2 or 1. You can see. And once it's disabled, it will affect both, even the neighbor behind it. So that's about the professional editing, the basics. Now let's use it in this case. We can select, for example, smooth, and and we need to actually scale down these vertices. For scaling down these vertices, we can use Ctrl and A, and this allows us to scale those down. And let's switch to sharp now. Ctrl A and make these parts sharper. Very nice branch. And now we can reuse that for the rest of the project. Let's move it down. If you want to know more about these, I've actually created a very nice course. You can check it out. You will see it somewhere around here, or check the description. And then let's rotate it, and that's about the rotation. Let's add a few leaves, right? So we can use sphere, use a sphere for the leaves. We can set it to half of that, so we can divide it by 2. Let's divide it by 2, and this one as well, divided by 2. Later we can make it smoother by adding just a simple actually subdivision modifier. So let's set it to bounding box or individual origin. Let's select now each of these and move through the cursor. Select it, cursor to select it. Now this one, take a double click of this, Shift D, and selection to cursor. We can press RR 2 times in case if we want to rotate these. RR 2 times and rotate it. So this is the tree that we created. Let's set it to bounding box and scale it down and move it to the ground again. I like to create a grass by shaping these towards this way. And let's assign a subdivision by Control B and assign a loop cut by Control B and scale it towards this way, move it forward, move this one forward as well, Control B again. Okay, that's perfect. Now let's extrude it towards Z-axis and move it. Let's grab everything and move them up slightly. Now we can hold on Control and 2 to assign a level of subdivision. Let's Control R to assign a loop cut to make it just a bit sharper. Now you're free to change these. Grab it and hold on Shift Z to block out the Z axis. Very interesting. Now let's select each of these, and I like to move them to the ground. Let's rotate it towards this way, move them up, scale it down, GZ, Shift D. Okay, so let's select one of these and make it really large, and the rest keep it smaller. Now, very interesting. Now we have the tree package. Right click, shade auto smooth it. Even this one, but it seems to be really large, so make it smaller and move it to the ground a little bit. Let's select these parts. We can extrude it out. Let's go back to solid mode and move them up. I created some other variation of trees so that we can use in our scene. Now what we need to do is just moving these, which we merged, and of course we want to merge these trees as well later, and just move these and create our scene. For example, let's move it somewhere here and we will hide everything. Let's start from this angle. I think it's much better to see it 90 degrees in Z-axis. Let's right click and set it to geometry. Reset it. Some case we can, for example, delete these faces to be able to connect the edges of the buildings easier together. Then we can fill this area by select it and then press F. Then shift it once again. We can rotate it by 90 degrees in negative axis. And then move it here. Of course, as I said, we can, for example, delete this area as well. Control and delete it. Now we can move it in y-axis to close it. Close that gap. Let's remove this one. And we can have as many buildings as we want. By just deleting one of those. And we can fill the empty areas with more buildings, such as this one. And of course, even we can rotate a few of those. And now it's time for adding these trees. So let's merge all of them first. Control J. Oh, first let's merge. Apply this by Control A. Control A. Apply the subdivisions, and then the rest is okay. But just press Control. Oh, we have another subdivision, and now Control J. Do the same thing. Control J. Now all of these is one object. Let's move them and build the city with us. When we press Shift D, we have to press Shift Z in order to just move those along Z axis. Shift Z and then Shift Z to block out the Z axis so that we just see everything, the aligned word. Grab everything and move it to other side. You can rotate it by 180 degrees. And we are done. Let's now look at from front orthographic. And this is your city.
I'm almost done with replacing the buildings and trees, and this is the final scene that after a couple of manipulation were saved. You can adjust it how you want, but now let's select a few of these buildings. I moved everything around the word center. You can see X, Y. So let's look at from top orthographic, and I select these two buildings, and then we press Shift and S, and we choose cursor to select it. And almost here should be the center of this area. So let's press Shift and A, and down here we'll see a lot of other options like text. We can even assign a text. Let's rename the text to something. Enter tab and then select everything, and you can name it to city, for example. Select everything. Let's go to text properties, and we open up geometry. First we need to close these,
and go to fonts. Let's change the font first. Let's choose this font. Now we open up the geometry. We can extrude that font by holding down Shift. You will start to see the extrusion. And then Enter tab. Let's scale it and rotate it 90 degrees in X-axis. And let's place it somewhere on one of these buildings. For example, let's set it here. Press Shift and S, cursor, selection to cursor. Now let's rotate it 90 degrees in negative axis. Let's duplicate it, Shift D, and move it a copy of that here. And let's select it. Press Ctrl A and name it to Art. So now let's press Shift A once again, and we can add some other stuff. Let's add a camera. And where is our camera? Well, the camera is at the place of 3D cursor. Now I like to change my angle view to something like this. And then I press Ctrl and Alt and 0. If I do that, the camera will be locked at the look and view. So you can now press 0 to select the camera. If you select first the camera, and then if you press 0, now you are looking through the camera. And if you press 0 again, it will be unlocked. So let's press N. We go to View and make sure to View Lock Camera to View is enabled. Once it's enabled, when you press Shift and middle mouse, when you make a pan, the camera is still locked to this view. Let's click on this green icon for the camera and go to the camera properties. In the lens type, let's change it to orthographic. This is so exciting. Let's zoom out a little bit, because in orthographic we can only zoom out from here, and for here we only zoom out in viewport, not in camera. But you can hold down Shift and middle mouse to move it around and not zoom. So zoom is just possible from here. So let's make something like this, which is fine. Let's select these a few buildings, hold down Shift and select it, and let's press Shift S and cursor to select it. Now the center of these buildings is here. I like to add an empty because I want to control the camera using these empty. It can be any of these empty. Let's add a cube, for example. And then let's select the camera. Let's first scale this cube a bit larger so that it can be easier for us to follow. And from here you can change it at any time by any of these display as. Select the camera first and hold down Shift and select these empty. Press Ctrl and P because we want to parent this camera to the empty. Then choose Object and keep Transform. Now if I just select the empty, you will see the camera will follow that. And then we can animate it in Y-axis, for example. So let's select the camera, enter 0, and then we select these empty. Let's go to Item, choose the Y, and you can see when I just move the Y, it will be capturing. So we can select the camera as well, and we can play around with the depth of field to make some parts blurry and focus only in some parts. So about the angle of camera, you have to play around with the angle that you want to capture. I just like to add a couple of these to somewhere here. So I just changed the text a little bit, and then here I just extruded and snapped down to the other building. And let's turn on overlays and just go inside. As I said, you have to play around with the angle that you want to capture. And once you're ready, let's, for example, move these three, or if it's unnecessary to have, let's delete a few of those except the plane. And since our tree is not too low poly, it's really high poly, because I added these for each of these some actually subdivision modifier. We could keep them low poly, but it's just show you how things or tunes works in Blender. Now, what about the rendering? If I just press Z, by pressing Z we can switch really fast between these solid mode and wireframe mode. Solid, wireframe. As soon as I switch to material preview or render mode, let's press Z again, and we're in render mode. As you can see, this is blue, highlighted with blue color, means that we are in render mode. So after setting the camera, and now you will see that we already assigned a material, and I named that ground because I first added to ground and then assign that simple material to every model that I have in my scene. From this moment I will teach you how you can assign material. Well, let's click here and we go to Blender files, then make some room. We search after materials. Whatever in your scene will be in, you will find those in the current file. So you see that we have about 4 material, but one of those, which is ground, I added this material to 176 models. So let's right click and delete them, and now it will be white color, and I assigned a HDRI. Move cursor and we move to the left side to create a new panel, and here we can change it to shader editor instead. Let's press N, and instead of object we go directly to the word, and here we will see the setting for the HDRI. So I like to delete it. And now how we can assign an HDRI? HDRI, what is HDRI? HDRI is actually a 360 image captured from, it can be from anywhere, from landscape or whatever. So which fits to your scene. You can import it in Blender and use that as for lighting. HDRI is actually working like a sky. It will affect the world that we are living in. So let's press Shift A. We will use Shift A in the viewport for assigning these objects, and Shift A in object in the shader for both object and word. We can add nodes. So we search for environment, or we can just press Shift A and we go to texture and then choose environment from here. Connect the color to color, and it is first pink because we have no HDRI added to this scene. Let's click on open, and I have a folder called for HDRI, and I will search after a good HDRI, which this one will fit to this scene. There is another very handy and useful add-on called Node Wrangler. We go to Edit, Preferences, and in the search menu you can type it Node, and you will see it. If it doesn't find it here, you can go to Get Extension, but I think it is included here. But in case if you want to get the extensions or the add-ons, you just need to install it, make sure to connect to internet, and then you just need to click install. So I already installed it, so now I select this environment, Control T, it will bring these two nodes for me automatically. Now we can play around with the actually rotation in z-axis. We can't see it, I mean all the details because everything is white. So let's click on the we go back to the object instead. In the shader, we were still in shader, and then from word we will click on object. So for the object, the first thing that we see is this button right here. It says new, and we will see it in this folder. So this means that we added a few materials before, and we will see those, and we can get rid of that by clicking on this icon, or we can click here to assign a new material. So we can click from here or on this new. Both of those will work the same, and then we have same access from here in the shader editor. So let's click here for base color, and we can change the color, and you will see that this color will be, or this material is just applied on this building. So I have hex, I can copy and paste it. We go to hex and boom, we will paste it, and now you will see it. Move the roughness to very high, and the specular I leave it to 0.5 or 4, and roughness, when it's 0, it actually creates a very reflective surface, and when it's 1, there is no reflection, there is no glassiness. So for a building we can set it to almost 0.9, and a specular is actually, when it's 1, it will receive the word lighting or objects will effect on the building. So it will capture actually or save the lights from the surrounding objects, and when it's 0, it will not receive anything. So let's set it to something believable, and now we added our first object. We can go to material preview and enter tab. Let's open up or turn on show overlays, and now I'd like to select all the faces. Let's press number the slash to select it easier. Hold on shift and select each of these windows. So I will speed up the process. Now that I selected everything, we can just click on this new to assign a new material, and click on new, and we can name it to window. A window can be glassy, so if I just move this down, just take a look how the reflection will work. Just take a look at here, the sun is really shiny. We will see almost everything in this glass. And if it open up transmission, we can make this glassiness to pop up. Switch to render mode, we will see these like so. Of course, we can use it later in the projects, in the upcoming projects. So let's turn it up for now. And now let's press numpad slash once again, and we go to material preview, which is a bit faster. And let's rename this material to say black or dark gray. Now I'd like to select whatever we have in this scene. I mean, with all the buildings, not the trees. But even we can select the trees because we don't want to assign too many materials. I just learned or teach you how you can assign these simple material, and then you can select different parts of the object and assign a new material to that. And then make sure to select this one at the last because this one has all the material. And then we can press Ctrl and L, then choose link material, and look what will happen. It will link all the materials, which is very nice. So Ctrl S. So these are actually, it's not mesh, it's a steel curve, and difference between curve and mesh is that a curve can be edited by spline, but mesh, when you assign or convert mesh to curve to mesh, it actually is no longer curve. So we can, for example, right click and convert this to mesh, and now this is editable, and make it smoother. Just right click and make it flat. Oh, this one is interesting. So there is some bad news happening here. Let's deactivate this one and this one as well. Now we have just a single material. So let's type some very interesting text. Blender, and here we can actually do a cool trick, and that's assign a new cube and scale it in this way, and then scale it in y-axis. And then we want to take a duplication of that and rotate it 180 degrees. Let's move it here. And grab these and assign the black material. Of course, we can actually select both of these faces and assign a new material. Let's rename it to light. And then we go here and play around with the emission. Let's set it to 6, and we can turn it to a greenish color. Now it's much interesting to have that color. It allows us to see it better, see the text better. And now let's select these windows that we already added, and we can actually play around with these and set it to, for example, 5 or so, and set it to an orangish color. Let's right click and join this area. Now we have already set up our camera in the previous video, and then we go to render, and we will see this nice added material. We can of course play around with the color of these, make it darker or brighter. Let's keep it darker. And you can see with that depth of field how these will work. So let's grab this box and just move it to demonstrate what we have created so far. Very interesting. Let's render it out. How we can render it out? Well, we first need to select this object, and then we need to bring in our timeline, and let's set it to the timeline, and we jump to the first frame. Let's remove these. We have no keyframe, and then let's change this one back to outliner. And now press, let's go to material preview to see a faster preview. Let's press N, or instead we can have access from here. So let's press N to disable it. Now we can select these empty. We parented the camera, and you can see if I just move it, the camera will move with that. And let's animate. Let's select this one as well and parent it to the empty, because that is our depth of field. Now let's select it, and we want to animate it in y-axis. So let's move it from here, and we right click, insert a single keyframe, and the time of these the duration is 100, which is fine. And then we move towards this way. And click here. I think it's very fast. It's super fast. So let's move it back so that we can start from here. Replace it. So let's press number the slash, and you will see this is in, if I just right click, it's in Bezier. So you can press T to, turn on or to open up the set keyframe interpolation mode. We can, for example, press T again and set it to Bezier instead. And now let's see how it will work. So it's still too fast because the end frame is very low, so we can assign 40 frame further. So let's press Shift and F12. So they can be 140. And then grab this keyframe. Now we have much smoother animation. So that's about the animating with just a single keyframe. Of course, with two single keyframe, we animated this camera, and now we are walking through it. Rendering time depends on a few things. Let's open up sampling. First one, so this is the viewport, and the most important for rendering is the render tab. And the most important thing is the max samples. For now, for each render or single image rendering, I set it to 200 samples. We can level it to 500 and it will create a very high quality render image. And then we go back to the output. In the output we have some presets, 4K or Full HD, which in this case is Full HD 1920 by 1080, and you can play around with this percentage. Since you're taking a render animation, the frame rate is important. If you want later, for example, in your editing software, play around with the speed of your animation, you can set the keyframe to a very high, like 60 frame, and of course it will increase your time of rendering time a lot, because instead of 24 we will for only 1 second we actually will render 60 frame, 60 of each of these. For example, if I say that now 24, which is somewhere around here, is 1 second, now the 1 second is going to be 60 of this image. 60 rendering of this image will complete 1 second. So that's great. But I like to set it to 24 since I don't want to smooth it out further than this. But let's try and take a still image first to check if everything works good or not. So let's set it the viewport to wireframe or solid mode, and then we go here and choose render image instead of render animation, and we wait this a few minutes. You will see the sampling. Oh, we set it to 500, which will take longer, and it actually says remaining is going to be 2 minutes for each sample, for each still image rendering. So we have to wait something about 2 minutes. And boom, the rendering is finished. Now we can hold on Control and middle mouse to zoom in, and we have got a very high quality render image. Of course, we can go to the compositing and right click here, join this area, press N. Let's turn on use nodes, since I like to talk about the compositing. So here is some magic will happen. If I press Shift A, as we used Shift A in the viewport in the layout for assigning the objects or for importing the objects, now we can use Shift A in the compositing for adding these nodes. You will see we have a lot of folders organized very good, and a few of those which we will work is color adjustment and the glare. So let's grab the glare, and we don't see the image at the background, so that's good to have it. So let's press Shift A, and we want to search viewer, which is right here. So we grab it and we want to connect this one to here, and hold on Shift and right click to assign a vertex, and now it's easier to work with. Hold on Control and middle mouse to zoom in and out, and grab this, move them out, move them towards the left and right. In case if you want to zoom out the image at the background, you can press V and Alt V to zoom in again. So zoom out V, Alt V will zoom in. You can hold on Alt and middle mouse to move the background, and just middle mouse to zoom the nodes, to move the nodes. So let's set the glare Instead of streaks, let's set it to 5 glow, and it will smooth out, and we want to see the glow of these highlighted parts. Then we have the setting. If we set the threshold to 2, look what will happen compared with before. We had a stronger glow, now we have less glow. So let's use a less glow. And then we can press Shift A, we go to color, adjust, and color balance. So color balance, as it sounds, we will actually play around with a balance. Hold on Shift, and I want to make it lower just a little bit. If you click here, you will see how much of this you have added. So you can press M, select the node, and just check before and after. A very, very tiny touch they've just added to it. You can hold on. And now let's press M again, before and after. So that's a lot better. We killed those like fogs around these buildings. Let's go and assign another very great thing, which is color correction. So let's move it here. So let's hold on Shift, and you can see it will just affect the brightest part. Let's set it to 0.1. And now let's disable it. Now we will see it much warmer than before. And now let's assign another very interesting, which is RGB curve. I'd like to play around with this one, which will affect everything. You can see if I just play around here, we just want to see the glows area. So that's very important to know this. In case if you want to delete something, you can just select that vertex that you already added, and it will remove. With this way you can change the color. Since we want to create a night shadow, so we can actually leave it to this nice color. Let's turn it off by pressing M or mute it, and see before and after. After is a lot better. I have a very good package which I explained the lighting in detail and the compositing.
Hello friends, your automated Blender bundle is here. Take your skills from beginner to pro with our exclusive 5-course bundle. Are you ready to elevate your 3D skills to professional highest? Introducing my Blender Mastery Bundle, featuring 5 of my best courses ever, designed to transform you into a 3D powerhouse. Whether you are starting from scratch or refining your craft, this bundle covers it all, the key to creating stunning professional quality renders.
So it was about adjusting and playing around with a couple of nodes inside compositing. The goodness of this is that now every single frame that you will check render These nodes that you already set it will pop up, will be applied on the render image. Let's go back to layout. And this is the result that we got. Now I'm ready to take the render animation. So we go here first. Let's go to the output and find your folder that you want to save it. And we accept it. Now let's set the viewport to wire or solid. Do not leave it in render because it try render out the viewport and at the same time will try to render out your scene. So let's leave it somewhere here. And then we go and click on render animation. And we will wait a few hours until this process take finish.
If you like to see this channel improve every day and bring you even more useful and exciting tutorial, I'd be thrilled if you like, subscribe and share your thought with me. Your feedback helps me continue this journey even stronger.